Today's episode is co host Bethany's story of joy. Be encouraged as you hear real life experiences of what joy looked like during her life journey. A note on our content for this episode that may be a trigger to some. There is mention of sexual trauma in the first 4 minutes. Feel free to skip ahead past the 4 minute mark. Hey, Bethany, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Carol. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Today's your day. It's going to be your story day.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay, I think I can say I'm a little nervous too. So, we'll see. So this is where my life started. I grew up in a home that believed and told me about Jesus at an early age. My mom would sing to us. We went to church. It was very important to our family. And at the age of 5, I asked Jesus into my heart. My mom tells me I came to her and said that I was mocking God. And she thought, I don't even know if she understands what mocking was. But I asked him into my life that evening, and that started my joy journey. And I was a pretty joyful kid because there was this older gentleman at church that used to call me Smiley when I would come in. Hello,
Mm.
Smiley. So, I mean, I was a really joyful child, but something kind of big happened when I was 5 or 6 and I was sexually abused. And it was not a family member, it was outside the family. And it just it was a big deal in my life. I can't really remember the time frame on how long I lived with it. My mom tells me it was quite a while before they found out. And I held on to that secret for years and years. And they did the best they could. They dealt with it as that they could, but it was the 80s. So, it's not like now where you have a lot more intervention as far as counseling goes and other things. And they went to the church and then they dealt with it, helped my parents deal with it. But I just remember it kind of being kind of shoved under the carpet after that. It was one and done kind of thing. And at that young age and living with that, and just I had a lot of shame and guilt as a result of that. So I uh it was hard to I wanted to follow Jesus, but then I had this big secret. I felt like it just consumed my thoughts
Mm.
and my heart. And at 13, I went to camp and I was going to find a guy. That was I've, I was like, I'm going to get a boyfriend, which in my house, we couldn't really date till we were 18. So that was hilarious that at 13, I thought, but I think that was my rebellion coming out.
Mm.
Definitely, Carol.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so I remember one of the last nights it talked about how do you view God? Is he like your earthly father, or is he the loving God that is perfect? And I did view God as my earthly father, who I felt neglected by. I think because of my sexual abuse, he didn't want to hurt me, so he stepped away instead of giving me the love and affection I needed from a person that wasn't going to hurt me. He just didn't know how to deal with that. So I don't blame my dad for that. And actually, he and I have made peace before he passed. And I was able to tell him I didn't hold anything against him. I just remember when I would run away from him, when he would want to hug me and I would push away. All I really wanted him to do was really hug me and just, nope, I love you. And I'm not going to let you go. So I had this hard viewpoint of what God was, that he was a neglecting person and he didn't love me and he would just let me go. And that was totally the wrong perspective. So
Mm.
when I understood who he was and that he loved me, when I believe that process of healing started was when I was 15. Camp was really a big deal for me. When I turned 15, I went to camp again, same camp, just a different year. And I
Wait, I have a
decided,
question. I have a
yeah.
question. You
Mhm.
never said if you found a boyfriend at when
Oh,
you
I
were
did.
13. Oh,
I
you
did.
did?
His name was Jesus. He was the
Oh.
best boyfriend ever. He was better
Okay.
than a boyfriend. No, I did not. Actually, that was not the I was looking for a different guy and God said, "Nope, I'm your guy." So,
Oh, that
it
is so
was
sweet.
That's true.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to ask that.
No, that's fine. And then, so at 15, I started questioning, was it my fault? And the thoughts I had and the emotions I had, I started dealing with that, but I pushed them all down. And then the following year, when I was 16, back at camp, my counselor was God ordained. I didn't know her. The first night we talked, she talked about forgiveness and how forgiveness is a process and how she had to forgive her stepdad and her
Mm,
biological father. And I remember she was saying, I want to meet with all of you during electives or free time this week. She's like, I have tomorrow. And I said, I'll be the first. I was the first one. And I think I had determined in my head I was going to tell her that night. And I don't trust very easily. I have a hard time with trust. And so for me to get into that place of trusting her with this information, I also think she was a stranger. So if she never saw me again, it wouldn't matter. So I think
mm,
there was a little bit of that in there and
yep.
anonymity or whatever that word is. So in the middle of the lake in a paddle boat, I dumped this on my poor counselor who got equipped and she handled it like a champ. The
Mm,
first thing she said was, you know, it's not your fault, right? And I, at that point, did not, I had questions, but I didn't know if it really was my fault. I was really questioning, like, maybe I could have done something different. What if I had done this or told my parent? I don't know. But then I look at 5 year olds or 6 year olds and I think, yeah, they're basically a grown baby. You know, they can't comprehend things. This was way bigger than anything I could deal with. So she was awesome. She said, I will talk to the camp pastor. I said, that's fine. I just don't want to talk to him. And so the last night she said, hey, he told me you have to forgive this offender. And I was like, oh my word, no way. No
mm.
way, Carol. Forgiveness is not happening. But I did. I nailed it at the cross. I forgave him. But that was the beginning of a long road to forgiveness. And it started that day.
So when you say you did forgive him, did it happen that very night or that very day?
I think the process did. I don't think I initially felt it in that moment. I think it was an emotion. I did what was quote unquote obedient for me, but I
Mm,
don't think the feeling of forgiveness or the actual, because I think it's a process. I think, because there would be a thought or a memory that would pop up later on, and I would have to again forgive him in that
mhm.
moment of that memory or that thought. Or if something would come up that would be outside of that, in relationships, it happens a lot. And I would get afraid or scared. And I'd have to actually forgive in that moment because it was related to this moment, that
Yes.
incident. It was a relation to that. So to forgive him was a constant, but it got easier. It was
Mhm.
definitely easier.
I asked that because I have, my own story as well. And exactly as you put it, you can forgive initially out of obedience, but it may not fully be there or ongoing. It kind of pops up again. And it's in my experience too, it's like a process. It is a process
Mm-hmm.
for it to fully, for me to fully let go of it. And I just think that's a really common thing because it's part of, I think, being human. And when it's a big thing, it can't just be one and done sometimes, oh, yep. It's not like more of a little thing that you
Yeah.
can more easily process through and say, yep, they did that. I'm okay. I'm okay now. I'm going to forgive and I'm done and move on.
Yeah. I think if it's a deeper pain or hurt, divorce, sexual abuse, any kind of abuse, it is definitely it's deep seated.
Yeah.
And there's usually a lot of layers to that.
Right.
It's not just, oh yeah, I offended somebody and you apologize and it's over and you don't think about it in 2 weeks. This is something that you often dwell on or it comes up in your memories or there's triggers. There's lots of triggers.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So my joy was really stolen from me when I was younger. I was really shy shy little girl, and I was very self-conscious. I remember this, and I never felt good in myself, in my body. I also was super tall and I was awkward and I would say on the chubby side, but honestly, I look back and I was just that's how I was built. I was I was not petite, shall we say. So, I didn't have a good self-image because of that situation, and so I wanted to be a wallflower and blend in
Mm,
with the wallpaper. That was because then if I didn't get noticed, I wouldn't get hurt. That's a big one. So, God giving me freedom in this, I felt like I had a new lease on life and I became, I think, who God really wanted me to be. I have way more joy. I started enjoying my life better and laughing more and just being goofy and fun. And I felt like God definitely gave me back the years that had been stolen from me in those
mm,
later high school years. I enjoyed that time of my life a lot.
mm,
It was a good time. And God kept showing up. I ended up going to a youth conference in my senior year, and it was called Life. And at the end of the conference, they basically gave you this three-ply sheet where you took part of it home, they took part of it home, and then there was the little, what's that piece of graph or, it copies? What is it? Graph or what's that thing? I don't even know what it's called. Anyways, but it was like a copying thing. So in that, I wrote that I want to help other people in my situation that have had sexual abuse and to be able to let them know that there is healing, there's hope, there is you can get out of this and it can be you can have a sweet life, you can have a joy-filled life, you can get back what Satan is trying to steal and to kill and destroy. I also did counseling, and that's something that I want to share right now is if you are in that situation and you're thinking, Bethany, yes, I have been keeping this for a long time. It is okay. And maybe you're at the place where you want to start dealing with it. It is a process. It is like an onion. You take layer by layer. God just works with you, and He's so kind and gentle. And He has been with me for sure on that. But talk to someone that you trust. That's my biggest thing. Ask God to bring someone into your life if you don't have somebody. There are people in your church, in your friend circle. Don't be afraid. It might take a little bit of courage for sure at the beginning, but there are people that can help you and they want to help you, but they just don't know that you're struggling with this.
mm.
And God puts the right person in your path at the right time. And so, if it's a pastor, if it's a friend, a mentor, a Bible study leader, a lot of times those people are put into your life because they have gifts that you might not know they have. So that's what I want to share that part and how do you start the process of healing? It is a lot of prayer and a lot of courage, and God will give you strength to get through it. So my life verse comes from Isaiah 58:11, and it says, God will guide you continually, giving you water when you are dry and restoring your strength. You will be like a well watered garden, like an ever flowing spring. And God gave me that probably almost 20 years ago. And I have held on to this verse as my life verse for that long because it just talks about how He is restoring you and He's giving you life. And the version that I memorized was actually from the Message Bible, and it says, I will always show you where to go. I will give you a full life in the emptiness of places, strong bones, firm muscles. You will be like a well watered garden, a gurgling
Mm.
spring that never runs dry. And I absolutely love that. It's just, God does fill you in those empty places of your life. He will fill you if you let Him and allow Him to do that.
I love that. And I really like the example you gave. I mean, that's a perfect example of when God worked and how He worked through that counselor. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't when you were there, when you were there 13, you learned about Jesus. When you were there at 15, it was, still good experiences, but he kept bringing you back. And then 16, put a person in place, your camp counselor,
Mm-hmm.
to exactly help you, like with what you needed.
Yeah.
I mean, that just shows a time frame of exactly how he worked in that time frame. It's like an example of what you just described of he will put people in place and walk with you
And
to
there's a
get you
lot of
what you need.
counseling at those conferences. I didn't share this, but there was prayer counseling at that life conference, and I did do that. And I also was able to share my story with some friends, which I was always afraid to tell my friends. I
Mm,
thought they would judge me or not want to be my friends anymore. And that's totally Satan. He wants to keep all of this in the dark so you can't get healing. And at the beginning, I'll tell you, I cried all the time. Every time I told a story, I would be bawling.
mm,
And I just see this as able to tell my story and not from a place of raw emotion. God has healed me to the part where I can share this and not be in tears because it's not that raw anymore. It is
right.
just
So
a
talk
part.
about your joy throughout this entire process. Obviously that was a huge joy stealer
Yeah,
and went on for a while.
it was a joy stealer and I couldn't really be who God wanted me to be. And I look now and I'm positive I love to laugh. I have a lot of joy in my life and I don't think I would have that if I hadn't dealt with that issue of the sexual abuse. Really dealing with that gave me freedom to be me and to be joy filled and to not be afraid of, you know, and do I struggle? Carol, I still struggle with this. it's,
Mm.
it's not, I mean, there's still things that I have a hard time being vulnerable with. And I'm learning that even this week. So I struggle with that, but God is still good and he's still working on me and I'm a work in progress. I am not a I'm not the Mona Lisa yet.
Yeah. Well, let's just say it. You're not Jesus yet, and none of us will be
No.
until,
I'm a work in
it's all
progress.
done.
Yeah. There was a Bible study that we did. This is just reminding me of it. I'm totally off track. But there was this Bible study we did as a women's group, and it was uh, talking about in Italy, there's a museum, and the David is in there. And on the way to the center where David is, there's they're called the prisoners. And basically, they are half sculpted sculptures in big rocks. So you can see a limb or a head or a foot but they were from students that were basically taking lessons. And so these sculptures are called the prisoners because they're half done, they're not completed. And the moral or the premise of the Bible study was that we're in process with God. We're not a finished process. We're not David. We are
Amen.
still being chiseled by God if we
Mm-hmm.
allow Him to chisel us.
Mm-hmm.
So know that you are still in the process of becoming a masterpiece, but you're not there yet.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
So I ended up deciding not to go to college. I moved out on my own and I started going to a new church. I got involved with a campus ministry. That was an awesome experience. I started mentoring and doing Bible studies. My 20s were a good time of me discovering who I was. I had some health issues, I had some thyroid issues, but God healed me from those in my late 20s.
Mm.
And God just was rich in just taking me quietly and softly through just things. I had a really hard time with being in a relationship with guys, and God brought a guy into my life he was a friend first, and he became more to me. He ended up not being quote unquote the one, but I know God used him in my life to get me more, be like comfortable with the opposite sex because of that, it was definitely not what I was insecure on that.
And don't you feel like God puts people in our lives to sharpen us too? I feel
Mhm.
like we're always sharpened by anyone we say yes to in our lives, to come into our lives and become friends with, or an acquaintance, anything. I mean, it could even be the coffee person, at the coffee house. I just find that very rewarding
Mm-hmm.
when I look at that in hindsight, when it's actually happened. It's like, I see what you did there.
You
You're
put
so
that
good that
person
way.
right there, Carol.
Yes.
You're in my
Yes.
life for that reason.
Yeah. Ditto. So,
So
yeah.
my late 20s, God really took me on a bunch of stuff. He got me into a career that I was really enjoying. And I was working at my church in early childhood. I was leading a women's small group. I really pressed into him and did a lot, at my church, and just, those that they became my extended family. And then my 30s hit, and I remember I went to a women's conference, and I really did not get anything out of it. I remember thinking, what a waste of time. And I was calling a friend on the way home because she lived far north from me, and we didn't see each other an awful lot. And she said, "Oh, isn't the best conference? The worship was so good." And she's going on and on and on. And I'm like, what conference were you at? Because I didn't get any of that. And she stops and she said, "Bethany, you need to go to counseling." I said, "Oh." She's like, "Yep, you need to call Yvonne, and you need to," that's our counselor at my church. She used to go to my church, so she knew. "You need to get together with her, and you need to deal with this. You should not have felt nothing. This was an awesome conference." And I was like,
Mm,
huh, maybe, she's probably right. And I wasn't depressed. I know that, but I would use the word numb, as in I didn't really care what happened in my day. I was just going through the motions of my life.
mm,
I would get up and go to work. I would eat lunch. I would, eat breakfast, whatever. I would just go through my life, and I would go to church. I would do all my stuff, and I didn't have any joy. It wasn't that I didn't have, I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't happy. And I felt just blah, numb, whatever. And so I met with her, and we started dealing with some of my past stuff again, came back up. It always does. And we started dealing with that. And she started having me surrender every day, my mental, emotional, physical, spiritual being, to God every day. And I started working on how I viewed myself, my self image, because I had such a terrible self image. And I started looking in the mirror, and I did this for about a year and a half. And every time I looked in the mirror, I would tell myself, I know that God loves that image, that person, and I want to love that person the way God sees me and others see me, not the way I see myself, because we are our biggest critic.
mm,
So literally, it was a daily reminder. Every time I looked in the mirror, I would say those words to God. Basically, I would say, "God, I want to love the person that I see in the mirror, just like you love it."
mm,
And it was a process of constant. And we met, I think we met probably once every other week for quite a while, and then we started meeting just once a month. And then I was able to talk to my dad during that time and tell him I did not hold anything against what happened in my youth and with my sexual abuse. I didn't He wasn't responsible, but I think my parents took on a lot of that. We were taking care of you and this happened. And so there was a lot of
guilt.
guilt for
Mm,
them.
sure.
So to let them know that I did not hold it against them, like, bad things happen to good people
Mm,
and bad people because of sin. It's not them. It wasn't anything they did the best job they could for us kids. It just, sin happens. So that was really cool. And she asked me at that point, she said, "Bethany," and this is important, "where was God when that was happening? What was what do you have a picture of when you were going through that sexual abuse?" And I had an immediate picture, because God had given this to me a long time ago, and I didn't realize what it was. But when I was dealing with my healing, he gave me a picture of Jesus sitting cross-legged, just weeping next to me.
Oh.
And it is the sweetest picture I have of Jesus because he does weep with us and he does not want this to happen to us. But I have this really sweet picture of Jesus just weeping next to me. And I wasn't alone. He was right there with me. And I
Mm.
just think maybe there's someone out there that needs to have a different view of what Jesus was like or where God was when they were having whatever happened to them, whether that's rape or sexual abuse or abuse, physical abuse. Where was Jesus during that? Where's your picture of Jesus? And she said that's very important. And I didn't realize this. So God had given me that years before. So I am so glad I went to counseling and I
Yeah.
continue to see her. And she checks in with me probably every 6 months and we have a talk or I go and see her. And it's just it's really good to have people like that in your life that you trust and that can keep you in check. It's also good to have mentors and accountability people in your life.
Yeah, I totally hear you. That spiritual community, that group of people who are in your life makes such a difference,
Mm-hmm.
especially as you walk through whatever events you're going through, whether they're small or big. But I feel like there's a level of joy there too with that community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because it's just easy to be yourself around them because you have a common ground. I don't know, but I do think that's part of it. And you can trust them.
So now, today, I love my life that God has given me. I am still single. I have not dated a ton, and I have moved out of my hometown where I was living when I moved out originally, and I'm living with my mom. So I'm a caregiver currently, and my dad passed away about a year and a half ago, and so that's been an interesting journey. I quit my job, my career, because that
Mm,
job was really sucking me dry of all my joy. And I really let it. And I have tendencies of workaholism. And so because I'm not married, I don't have children, I put most of my energy into my job, my career. And I realized that that's not healthy emotionally or physically. So to quit the job and move home, rent my house out, I'm totally doing a completely different career and I love it. I'm a caregiver for a quadriplegic and I love that. It is like so rewarding. I also am a virtual assistant. So my life has completely changed for the
mm,
good. And I just see God's hand in it. And I do have so much more joy. I get to spend time in nature. God has really healed me a lot this year and a half, getting me back into the right state of mind. I think our mind is where a lot of things begin, ideas and sometimes I don't think we think enough. I think the world goes by so quickly, Carol, that we don't have time to think. And God
mm.
really wants us to dwell and meditate on him. So I've had a lot of time to think and process and pray and be in his word, which is just great. And I would encourage you, if you're out there struggling reading your Bible, I am dyslexic. So reading is difficult for me. I'm a slow reader. And sometimes the Bible can get real hard to read. So I started listening to it. And that was revolutionary for me. And so now I'm in
Oh,
the word every day because it's easy. It's good to be in the word and hear it. And I love being with God. And a lot of times on my walk in the morning, I'll get out my Bible and listen to the Bible. And then I do my worship and I walk my 4 miles. And it's just such a great start to my day. I don't do it every day, but most every day I'm up really early walking. So that's
wow.
me in a nutshell.
Wow. I just have to say I heard God working through your life in every phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so, so grateful that you came out on the other side of that joyful. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so grateful to be connected with you doing something joyful together, Bethany.
Agree.
You are a joy light. Absolutely. I can attest to that one.
Thanks,
So,
Carol.
yeah.
Uh,
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story today.
well, I can't wait to hear your joy story next.
Oh, yeah. It's coming up next, isn't it? Yes. Yes, ma'am. So, until then, we want to tell you to
Pour
out
your
joy.
till next time.